All right, let's get started, folks. So quantifying the value of transformation in your company. Yeah, great question. So we had some folks that were in another session. If you didn't get one of the handouts, raise your hand. The team will make sure that you get one. Just keep your hand up until you get a piece of paper. Just a single sheet, just a little part of what we're going to cover today. So we heard a lot during the other sessions yesterday and today. A lot of questions. You know, how do you get executive buy-in? How do you how do you get more user adoption? How do you get support for funding to develop your system, expand your system? Maybe you need resources. Maybe you see an opportunity for another group within your organization that's not using it that really could benefit from it. So my hope for this session today is to give you some ideas, a tool, which we'll make sure that you get after the conference. You'll get this spreadsheet. I'll be bouncing between a PowerPoint and a spreadsheet today, back and forth a little bit. These are ideas. There's probably, I don't know if it's like 10 different categories of ways that you can justify Adept. They're thought starters, really, because they're probably not exactly the ones. I think many of them are going to apply to almost all of you. Some of them won't apply to you, and you'll have other ideas. In fact, I can think of 3 or 4 off the top that are not covered here, like integrator. I don't have anything on here for integrating your enterprise business systems. That could be a huge opportunity for further justification. So you can take this spreadsheet, build it out further, expand on it, and have an even better story to tell your management, executives, people in other departments. Maybe it helps justify a raise, a promotion. Maybe you just want to understand, what is this tool really doing for our company? Let me quantify what that is. We had some great conversations about the value of a document. And I thought that was another great way to to look at this. So that's the concept for the presentation. And I'll start here in the PowerPoint. So I kind of covered, I think, some of this. Yeah, justifying licenses, services, resources, your renewal, attendance at Adept Experience 2020. Just help people understand what you're doing for them. So the first topic, I think we can all relate to this one. This is pretty universal. Maybe was the single biggest reason that you selected Adept or that you went out looking for a document management system. Finding documents quickly and easily. So I'm gonna kind of breeze through some of this because this is super basic. We all know the ways that Adept helps you access documents, right? You've got a single point now for document distribution and control, common platform, and you've got metadata. So you can search for files located anywhere, regardless of the server or the folder that they're in, and Adept gives you those results, whether it's metadata-based searching, full text searching. You've got saved searches, favorites, recently used files, all these tools to just make finding your files easy and fast from anywhere. The file guide, browsable, metadata-based tree structure, and of course, perhaps most important, you know that you're always finding the latest revision. Adept ensures that. Adept gives you that latest version. So let's pop over to the spreadsheet. We're going to bounce around a little bit. And you see I've got this spreadsheet, multiple tabs across the bottom. We're going to go through those. We'll scan through some of them a little quicker than others. This particular one, I gave you a handout. So I'm going to ask you to pull out your phone and your calculator app on your phone. I'd love you all to follow along, and then I'll ask for any feedback from the crowd. Once we walk through this, I'd love to hear what some of the numbers are. So the first question is really, and if you can see it up there, the numbers in blue are, and you'll get this spreadsheet, so the numbers in blue are the ones you would edit, right? Plug in your data, and the rest of it is going to calculate. But here we're using kind of the hand calculator method. So first jot down how many files are in your system. And this is just the let's say the in files. We're not going to worry about versions, just how many unique files in Adept. So everybody, and you may not have the exact number, make an estimate. You may not know what that is. And then what percentage of those do you estimate? And again, you can go back to the office, research this. What percentage of files are viewed or accessed on a monthly basis? So of your total files, how many are people accessing on a monthly basis? You may have to estimate. You can see, I think I've got 2% plugged in here. 2% of the files in our system are accessed. And maybe somebody searches, they find a file, they view it, they look at some metadata. Maybe they're reporting on something about that file. So then that would yield the total number of files viewed or accessed monthly. So you can do the math there. And I don't have one of those little handouts that you guys have, but I think it gives you the multiplication there. You're just taking column, the first one there, the first entry multiplied by the second. In the example, it's 5,000 files are viewed or accessed monthly. Now estimate, so compare before Adept, what it took for, say, a remote user somewhere to find a document, either on that server or on a remote server. What's the average amount of time do you think it took to find files before? And how much time does it take now? And you want to write down the minutes saved. How many minutes does Adept save you, on average, just an estimate here for now, finding files? All right. So, and let me just steal one of these. Borrow your sheet. Let me just steal that for 1 sec. All right, so you got your minutes saved. So then multiply A times B times C. Are you guys with me? Show of hands, we're good? Following along? Okay. All right, so that should give you your minutes saved per month. Let's convert that to hours. So here we're just going to divide by 60. That'll give you your hours saved per month. This next question, the per hour opportunity cost per person. You're going to identify what that is. So in one example that we went through, the organization used a $300 per hour opportunity cost. So that's not the cost per hour, the salary of an individual, the average salary or the burden salary. Most companies want to get more from their people than just the salary or the salary per hour. There's an opportunity cost, right? They want that person to be able to contribute maybe a 3x. So I've got 300 in there. I'm going to back it down for purposes of this to $100. You can use whatever number you want, $50, $60. What's the cost per person? And then from there, you can do the math and come up with the monthly savings with Adept. Which is, in this spreadsheet, B8 times B10. So the hours multiplied by the per hour opportunity cost. So I've got $16,000 of savings per month, or about $200,000 per year. Did anybody get through that who would like to share your numbers, your data? What was the savings just in this kind of little worksheet, this example, with Adept and searching? Ryan, go ahead. $900,000. $900,000. How many documents in your system? 150,000. With 150,000. Okay. What did you estimate, Ryan, for percent viewed or accessed monthly?
I put 10%.
Okay. And the minutes saved?
3.
3 minutes. Okay. And everything else and did you use a $100 per hour opportunity cost? Yep. Okay. There we go. Anybody else like to share your results? Love to hear one or two more. One more, come on.
What do you think, Mark?
All right, we got one over here. Go ahead. Do we have a mic? You want to walk me through it?
Sure.
Top down?
All right, so we got 3,500,000 files in the system,
Okay.
1.7%.
Right. I think I got that right.
And then 2 minutes saved per view access.
Okay.
119,000 minutes saved per month. Yep. 1983 hours saved. $300 per hour. We had a change here.
300 per hour opportunity cost?
Right, yeah.
So $7 million annual savings.
Yeah.
Just being able to find your documents quickly and easily with Adept. So hopefully this tool gives you some ammunition to go back and help others understand the value of Adept. Thank you guys. Thanks for sharing that. So I'll walk us through a couple more. Let's go back over to our slides. And actually, before we do that, let me jump back to the spreadsheet. So follow along with me, if you will. So we're doing some number crunching here. This is a ROI session, so hopefully you guys can follow along. So another way to calculate savings on finding documents is to think about the number of employees who regularly need access in your company to documents, not just the CAD or the engineering. You can think about the whole organization, whatever's the right fit for you. I've got 100 in here. 100 people need to find or access documents. Yeah.
Can you zoom in a little bit so it's more legible to the folks in the room?
Sure. Thank you,
you.
Brian. Is that better? All right, great. So total work hours per month per person at 90% capacity is about 144, right? That's kind of a rough given. So that's 14,400 work hours per month. So you'll see highlighted down below there, studies show that 20 to 30% of an employee's time is spent searching for information. That's huge. I've been hearing that number for years and years here. You see it in the studies. If you Google, you'll find it in reports. So I've got 20% plugged in here. I'm going to back it down to 10%. Heck, let's back it down to 8%. So that's 1,152 hours wasted per month searching for documents. Now with Adept, let's say that you're going to spend 3%, or I'll bump it up. Maybe it still takes 5% of people's time, or 4% of people's time. Maybe we cut it in half. I think we do a whole lot better than that. So it's 576 hours. That means 576 hours are saved with Adept. Again, at your per hour opportunity cost of $100, if we're using that baseline, that's $57,000 a month and $691,000 per year. So this is another way to calculate finding files fast, the value of that. At the end of the spreadsheet, when I work all the way to the right, we kind of tally everything up. And I don't use this particular searching, finding files. I use the first one that we all did together. So now let me jump back to the presentation here. Let's talk about accelerating project startup, or if you're a manufacturer, perhaps it's time to market. So we all know some ways that Adept can help with project startup, right? Getting a project completed faster, getting products out the door faster, uniting a project team on a single version of the truth. We talked about fast access, automating workflows, streamlining collaboration, reducing project handover time from months down to weeks. Dal shared an example with us where a plant, if it gets to production 1 to 2 days faster, may result in $1 million to $1.6 million per day in gross margin. Big numbers. Don, you shared some numbers earlier. I can't remember, it was 150,000 or something like that, but whatever your numbers are, you'll be able to plug them in over here. So let's jump back to our spreadsheet and take a look at, I'll skip over that one. Take a look at accelerating project startup. So again, this is just a template. All of your businesses are different. I'm trying to give you the idea. What's that, Chris? Zoom again? It didn't hold. It doesn't hold. We've got to zoom each tab. Thank you. So in this example, I've got, let's say we do 5 active capital projects per year. And we complete 20% of those, or let's say 1 per year. So the average duration of a project, I'm going to use as an example, 18 months. So here's where you would estimate what % reduction in the time to complete that project can Adept help you with, right? Fast access, automating workflows, connecting everybody, easier collaboration. Does that reduce project time by 5%, 10%? I've got 5.5% in here. That brings the average duration of a project to 17 months, from 18 months down to 17, right? So we've saved a month, or let's say 29 days. In an example where each day a plant is generating just $25,000 per day, right? $742,000 in savings. So it can be substantial. You know, in Dow's example where we plug in $1 million, the number goes obviously way up. So let's slide to another example here in our PowerPoint, the next topic. Streamlining change management. So how many people are using Adept's workflow for engineering change orders, that type of thing? We have some folks, quite a few, okay. So Adept helps in 2 ways, right? Eliminating some change orders. Maybe you've got change orders that happened before, and maybe now you've eliminated that. You've got better quality control, you've got an approval routing system, you've got less mistakes, more standardization. So hopefully we can eliminate some percentage of the change orders. Increased design reuse, just better quality. And then secondly, can we make your change process more efficient? Does Adept help you make your change process more efficient? Paper and email methods, we let those go by the wayside because they're error-prone and difficult to manage. Easily configurable workflow to automate your processes. Adept acting as a traffic cop, ensuring timely approvals. You've got time-based alerts and notifications to keep everything on track. All right, so let's pop over here and look at change management. Look at those 2 aspects of change management. So does anybody know how many ECOs their company generates a year and the cost of an ECO? I'm happy to use a real-life example here, but if anybody has one, no? Okay. So in a company that does 240 ECOs, engineering change orders per year, if the average cost of an ECO is $900, then your total cost of ECOs is $216,000. So first off, what % reduction in the number of ECOs can we have with Adept, right? How many of those wouldn't happen because you've got better quality going on? And I'll make this a little bigger. Let's say that Adept can reduce that by 10%. So we've eliminated 24 ECOs, saving us $21,000. That still leaves 216 ECOs that we're doing every year at an average cost of $900. But because we're using Adept, what efficiency gain do we get from that? Does Adept make our engineering change process 10% faster, 20, 30%? Any of you that are using it have an estimate of what that might be? Yeah.
I say
50% faster on your ECO process? Yeah. Great. So 50% faster means that $900 average cost of an ECO is down to $450 because of Adept, right? In this example. So that saves $97,000 total between eliminating ECOs and making the ECO process more efficient. We've saved $118,000 with Adept. We're going to bounce over to IP protection. Probably not a whole lot needs to be said about this. It came up a lot here during our discussions. Protecting IP is critical. You've heard the stories, you've read the news, you know how big these numbers are when it comes to actually getting IP stolen. Adept actually was created back in the late 80s because one candy company had somebody stealing proprietary designs and taking them to another candy company. And they contracted us because they needed their IP secured and protected. So that was really the very beginning. That was our second customer. Had IP issues, and that was the driver. $600 billion in losses are sustained by US companies from IP theft. So how does Adept help here? Well, so many ways, right? You've got that central point of control, one place where everybody's going, and you've got it audited. You've got that audit trail, you've got secure document vaulting, you've got reporting that can help you spot unusual occurrences that are going on. So these are some of the ways that Adept helps with IP protection. Let's pop over, and actually I think I might have had, let me see, did I have more there? Let me just bounce ahead. Make sure I didn't, oh, okay, we were okay. So let's go to protecting all of your IP. You know, today you may be protecting some of it, maybe the most important aspects of your IP. There may be other aspects not under Adept's control today. And so this gives you an opportunity to think about that. So one approach to that, and there may be other approaches that your organization may have for evaluating this, but what's the risk of IP theft in your company? In a given year, what's the risk of some kind of an IP theft happening? And then what's the average cost of a realized IP theft? And during the last presentation, I was doing some searching, reading some reports, just saying, like, what are the actual numbers out there? And what I found was over $100 million is the average cost of an IP theft. So I'm not going to use that example. I'll plug in $5 million, but it's expensive. If you get critical IP, it can literally sink your company, critical IP theft. So if the risk is 15%, the cost is $5 million, then your annual risk is $750,000. What percent reduction in risk of IP theft can Adept help with? Right, so you'll have to come up with that number or those numbers. I'm going to throw a number in here, and we've got some annual savings. Let's jump back over to our next topic, our next kind of justification topic. Does anybody in here have to comply with industry standards and regulations? Yeah, at least half, maybe 2/3 of the room. So this could be FDA 21 CFR 11, ITAR, OSHA 1910, utilities regulations, ISO, GDPR. There's aerospace standards and regulations. It goes on and on. So the average cost of being non-compliant is about $15 million. So not being compliant is expensive, and that's just going up. It gets more and more expensive to have a compliance situation or incident. And the average cost to manage compliance for a large company is about $5.5 million. That's what people are spending to protect against compliance issues. Their investments include data security, compliance platforms, incident response, audits, and so forth. So it's big, and we'll just go here and come up. So how does Adept help in this area? We assure proper documentation, version control, review and approval processes, all things that are important when it comes to compliance. We've got an audit trail that gives you a record of every action to a document. We're going to simplify, expedite, and ensure the accuracy of your compliance processes and allow you to classify data for legal purposes in audits and make it retrievable. So these are some of the ways that we help when it comes to compliance. So once again, quantifying this. So there's two aspects of it. There's reducing the risk of a compliance issue. Thanks, Don. Yeah? Hand gestures are appreciated. That's a little too big. So reducing the risk of a compliance issue and then streamlining the compliance process. So what's the risk of a compliance issue happening in your company? I've got 15% in here. Again, this is really just a template for you to go back, perhaps meet with others, and fill out this data. The average cost of a realized regulatory compliance issue, I've got $5 million in there. Let's bump it down, even if, be conservative. So that's your total annual risk. Now, what percent reduction in that risk do you estimate that Adept helps you with? I've got 10% in here, so that's $30,000 in annual savings. But if it happens that one time, it's very, very expensive. And then there's streamlining the process for complying with your industry regulations. So if your total current investment, all that you're doing to deal with compliance is $2 million, and we can make it, 7% more efficient. If you can, whatever that estimate is in your organization, there's some significant savings to be had there. So again, we want to get you thinking, are you tying Adept, are you thinking about Adept and how it connects with these very real business issues that your company faces? There's the problems that you might have come into Adept to address, the challenges that you're trying to address. Think about how do they really affect the broader organization. That's what we hope to inspire here. So enabling efficient collaboration. I think there could be probably 3 or 4 tabs on a spreadsheet that you can do around just collaboration. All right, so Adept helps, we know, again, connecting everybody to a single version of the truth. We know that collaborating across remote sites, trying to use Windows folders and manual methods of putting stuff back and emailing each other, and people are overwriting each other's work. It's an absolute mess and really not practical. SharePoint, generally, is thought to be a slow toolkit, right? It's not really an effective tool for this. Adept provides that central repository. You've got Vault replication to ensure your teams everywhere around the world, or perhaps around the country, have fast local access. Everybody's working locally. Everything's fast. And you've got visualization, markup, and compare. So these are all ways that you could use to help build a case or justify Adept. I've selected one in this spreadsheet. So you can build that out, add more content to this justification. But this particular example, it was a company expanding, who had expanded their operations. They had users in India with less than optimal bandwidth. And they were trying to access design documents. It was about 70. I've got 72 in here for round numbers for the math here. But 70 or so documents per day from remote locations with poor bandwidth. So, and the average open time for a design file without Vault replication, without Adept, was about 5 minutes. It made it almost not possible to collaborate with India. It really just wasn't working. So the time spent per day waiting for documents to open was 360 minutes, or 6 hours a day people were waiting to get to their documents. 1,560 hours per year were spent. At 100 per hour opportunity cost, that's $156,000. Now with Adept, with Vault Replication, they were accessing their files in 15 seconds because it was local. It was local in India. And Adept keeps everything connected. When you replicate, the documents can be in two places, but we don't let things get out of sync. Right? So the time spent with Adept was about 18 minutes a day, or 0.3 hours, or 78 hours per year, or 7,800 total cost in waiting for documents. So that's $150,000, $148,000 of annual savings with Adept. All right, back over. Let's look at rework and scrap. So this could be manufacturing scrap or construction rework, just mistakes that are happening. Oop. And so how does Adept help reduce costs associated with manufacturing or construction rework and scrap? Improve data integrity, easier to enforce design standards, built-in approval processes to ensure quality. You've got design reuse to leverage things that have already been designed and proven. And visibility to pending ECOs. Right, so everybody's more connected. We've got the right information. And this should help reduce cost and scrap. Pop back over to our spreadsheet. Reducing scrap. Zoom in a bit. And so does anybody know what amount of scrap, what the cost of scrap is in your organization? Probably not. You probably don't have that number off the top. So I've got an estimate in here. Let's change it to $400,000 a year. And let's say that some of that is just natural. It's going to happen. But some of it is due to poor, issues around design, incorrect versions making it to the shop floor, just challenges with document management that could have been avoided. So we're really dealing with about $80,000 that could have been avoided. And of that, Adept could probably help eliminate all of those or most of those. So we'll just say 60% of that gets eliminated, and we can save about $48,000 there as well. So how many people use Adept and the transmittal automation capabilities of Adept? Show of hands using transmittals? Okay, a good chunk of you are using that. So Adept helps with transmittals a number of different ways, right? It's easier to gather all the right documents that you need for the transmittal package. It ensures you've got the right version. It's going to include or exclude at your wish the related files automatically, the cover sheets generated automatically, and the transmittals can go through an automated approval process. So before we developed this and integrated with Adept, it was a custom application that we developed for several clients. People kept asking for this. I've talked with customers who have had 2 or 3 dedicated people who do nothing but create transmittal packages. They spend a tremendous amount of time trying to gather those documents. Is it the right version? Putting it in order. Sending it out to all the right parties. Filling out the cover sheets. So it's a lot of work. So how can Adept help with that, right? And what's the value of that? So how many hours are spent per week in your organization creating and managing transmittal packages? Does anybody have a ballpark on that? Anybody got some numbers they'd like to share? Anybody have a full-time person doing transmittals? Yep, one person, 2 people? 2 full-time people. So 80 hours a week, roughly, would you say? Ballpark? All right. So that's about a little over 4,000 hours per year. And using the $100 per hour opportunity cost, that's $416,000 spent doing that. Now, when you implemented Adept, and I don't know your situation, but have you been using Adept? Have you been using the Adept transmittal capabilities?
Not yet, we're still transitioning to that.
You're just still transitioning, okay. So if Adept should make a nice difference in that, but even if it's going to make a massive difference based on the experience that we have with others, but even if that's 40%, it's going to result in some real world savings. And perhaps those people are able to help in other ways. All right. Just a couple more examples here for you guys to ponder and think about whether these make sense in your organization and how to quantify that. So avoiding a plant shutdown or a utility outage. I remember actually talking to somebody in Colorado. It was Platte River Power Authority. They couldn't make it here to this event. But I remember asking, what did you guys do to justify Adept? Like, how did you get approval for this investment that you made? And he said, Scott, there was no question about justification. If we have one outage that could have been avoided because of proper document control and organization and security, Adept would pay for itself in 1 hour. So it's a no-brainer if you're in that type of a situation. This was a utility. So how does Adept help in that area? Improve data integrity, more reliable management of engineering change, tighter security. You've got maintenance and engineering actually connected and on the same page, and greater visibility to all of your information, to your data, for better decision making. Those are some of the ways. So pop back over to the spreadsheet and open that up a little bit. So what's the estimated risk of a plant shutdown or a utility outage due to poor document control, collaboration, data integrity, visibility in a given year? Maybe it's 30%, maybe it's 20%. Again, you'll all have a different answer for this. So, and what's the average cost of a plant shutdown or an outage? Anybody want to offer what that cost is if you've got an outage or a shutdown?
Is this per day?
This is a total. If you've got an outage and it lasts, is there an estimate of how long that could last? I guess it could last a long time, right? In your business, that could be, you've got one going on right now, I think.
6.5 months.
6.5 months outage, yeah. Yeah.
So it's $250,000 a day.
Wow.
Lost.
Is that what it is? Okay. So the numbers are big. All right. So whatever that total annual risk is, how can Adept help with that? What % reduction in risk do you get by having Adept in place? How can Adept reduce that? What's that savings associated? And then, obviously, for folks that aren't using Adept yet, if you have another system in place that you're using, there's real-world costs to managing your documents today. Maybe you're using a different system, software, subscription, support contracts. For those of you, and I've heard of conversations and I've had conversations with people here saying, you've got to help us, convince the powers that be to replace this other enterprise system that we have and let us expand Adept into that area too. So this perhaps helps. What are the costs of that other system? The support contracts, the maintenance fees, the infrastructure for that, the upgrade costs, administration and support. And yeah, we'll add that back in for Adept, but we're going to reduce it. We're going to have to eliminate that. Those costs will go away. So let's go back over here. Alleviating existing system costs. So simple math, what's the total cost of all those things that I kind of outlined, software, support, maintenance, infrastructure, and those come off, right? So at the end of all this, and you guys will get this spreadsheet, you can delete the tabs you don't need or just zero them out. add tabs that you might want to build into this, so you can certainly expand this, but you can, and let me open it up a little bit bigger, make sure everybody can see that. It might be too big. So for each line item, we've got, and I'm going to go back and change this project startup. That's a big number. Let's beat that one down a little bit. That was the Dow number. So let's go with the 50,000 a day margin generated from a plant, getting a project to market faster. And what do we use over here? Let me just double check one of these. Want to have at least semi-realistic numbers here, right? So these were Dow's numbers. Let's go down to 250,000 documents in the system. Let's go down to $100 per hour opportunity cost. All right, so now let's move all the way over to our summary. Business value of Adept. You can kind of see what that totals up to. You can see the little pie chart there of where the savings shows up. Your numbers will be different. Over 3 years, we anticipate that the growth here might go up 5%. So that's what's built into here. There's like a 3-year projection. But we also have to consider the costs of Adept, right? What does Adept cost us? And this is different for all of you, but you can plug in your numbers here, right? You've got your software costs, you've got your maintenance, you've got your implementation and training in year 1, and infrastructure costs as well. The good thing is year 2, you're really just looking at maintenance. Year 2, year 3. Towards the bottom, infrastructure costs, whether that's on-premise, in the cloud, either option, there's some cost associated with that. There's your administrator resource time. So how many administrators do you have? How many hours are they investing? Maybe year 1 is higher than year 2 or 3, or maybe it's the other way. And year 1 is a baseline, and then you're expanding, and you need actually more resources. But whatever that is, what's the burden rate of those people? I've just got a placeholder here for that. But you've got year 1, 2, and 3 costs to maintain the system, to administer the system. You've got user training, which is a big investment in year 1, a bigger investment. Maybe it's a full day for desktop and a half a day of training for your web users. So we've got like roughly 5 hours of training on average per user. You can feel free to play with those numbers. And in year 2 and year 3, maybe there's some incremental update training happening. So all this kind of equates to the total costs of Adept. Now this might be a very larger implementation, maybe not Dow large, but large. It may be the right size, maybe the size of your organization. But it's just an example so that we can take a look at the ROI with Adept. So this is kind of the summary here. So we've got our year 1 savings, our year 2 savings, our year 3. But then we're going to say, well, let's really be conservative. Let's say we're only going to get 60% of that value in year 1. So 2.8 million goes down to 1.7. In year 2, we're going to come down, we're going to say we're going to get 80% of the value, and then by year 3, we're going to be really optimized. And we're going to count that as 100%. We just went through the costs of Adept and whatever those numbers are, right? So 422K, 200K, and then 188K in this example. So what's the return on investment? In year 1, a little over $1 million. In year 2, 2.2 million. In year 3, even more, right? So that's this kind of shown here in this top graph. Can everybody see that okay? Make it a little bigger. Not that big. There we go. And I think most interesting might be the graph below that, which is the cumulative benefits of Adept versus the cumulative investment in Adept, right? That investment is big in year 1, but then when you add year 1 plus year 2, it doesn't really go up a whole lot because you haven't had to buy that software again in most cases. And year 3 as well. But the value of Adept continues on that trajectory. So in this example, months until full ROI in this scenario, 3.92 months to your full ROI. And I think, let me just go back to the slide deck. Yeah, I think that kind of concludes that portion of this. Was that helpful, guys? Can you relate to half of those tabs? Do they apply to you? Okay. Any questions? Yeah.
Do you guys have a method for coming up with a more accurate estimation on some of the assumptions that we're making in the spreadsheet?
I think we'd want to work with you, and that's a great point. Thanks for bringing that up, Don. So one of the things I would encourage you to do is get in touch with your Synergist account manager, team with them, and kind of go through your situation. We're happy to work with all of you to help build out your ROI for whatever purpose you have of wanting to use that, whatever that's for. But yeah, it's going to take some work on your end to kind of calculate that. Some of these things, you may need to talk to some different people in the organization because you may not have all of this data. But if you sit down with the right people and say, hey, if we're doing this and this, is that helping us with compliance? Is that helping us with IP theft? How might we quantify that? So I think internally, having those conversations, thinking about it, but I think there's real money there, and there's real value there that Adept is bringing. All right? In the back.
So is it better to attack this more at a corporate level or at a plant level? Because we have 4 different plants, but right now we were the guinea pigs of Adept at our plant. So should I do it a corporate wide, or should I just show what the benefits were for my plant and then basically multiply that by 4?
Basically what?
Multiply by the 4 plants that I have.
I think it really depends. If the plants are fairly similar, and it really depends on your goal, what you're trying to accomplish, what you're trying to justify, what's the end goal of this exercise. But I think if the plants are fairly similar, and you're just having a conversation, and you're trying to get that rough, get somebody to say, yeah, that's a lot here. And if you look at roughly the same in 3 other plants, you can do some quick math. If that's what you need, then that's perfect. If people want to see something that's plant specific, you may need to go to that level. They operate differently. Maybe they were a plant that was acquired, and so they have a whole different set of processes, perhaps a whole different set of problems, right? So going out and talking to them could be valuable. They may have a whole different ROI in each of those different plants.
And is that something that you guys I can say, okay, here I need you guys to go out there and conversate with those guys, or?
I think we'd love to be involved in that. Yeah, we'd probably want to have a conversation certainly with you first to understand what the goal is, what you're trying to accomplish. And I think we'd then probably get on a conversation with you, with those other plants, and start to dig in. We'd love the opportunity to help justify Adept in some of these other plants, absolutely. Great questions, thank you.
I'll add to that, Scott. Nick and I spent 3 days on site with an EPC in Iowa doing this exact task. And to your point, we're happy to do it. The problem is that a lot of times corporate won't believe it because the number is astronomical sometimes. The average time that they were spending just trying to find files at this EPC was 35 minutes per person per file. And they were accessing on average anywhere from 15 to 25 files a day, depending on what department they were in. We interviewed 9 different departments across the enterprise, and we found out that they would save over $900,000 a year just in finding files, with a minimum amount of licenses and engineering of folks who would be accessing Adept. That was a very hard pill for them to swallow. So I'll say, yes, we want to come on site, we want to help you with this exercise, but be careful of what you find out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and we would certainly need access to the people who may have some of this information, right? Anna, you had mentioned that I think you mentioned earlier on that the ROI, this tool from last Adept experience was helpful to you. Can we get Anna, Mike? I just want to hear, like, how did you end up using it? I never got to actually hear what you did with it or how it was valuable. That's Anna from Leatherman Group, Leatherman Tools.
Hi. Well, first I worked at that for maybe a couple of weeks just by myself. And as you just said, the numbers came astronomically high. Like something I need to adjust here doesn't seem right. And if I present this, again, questions, is this real?
Right.
And then so I adjusted some of the numbers. Unfortunately, I really wanted the numbers from our legal department because I think this is where the highest value is. What will be the loss if anything happens to your design files,
The IP
to your
loss.
product? And this is where kind of the big number comes. But without this number, I'm trying to recall, even funny, I tried to retrieve my spreadsheet to look it up on my phone, but I couldn't access it to see kind of as numbers. But my projection where the first year for us, cost savings was close to between $65,000 to $70,000, and then it was just incrementally increasing for over the next 3 years. That's what I was trying to project for the next 3 years. And I picked 3 years only because we have the maintenance contract with you for 3 years that we are about to renew.
Right.
And I just wanted to show once more, this is what we accomplished. This is where we were before Adept.
Yeah.
Here is the value. Here is the roadmap and what we want to accomplish in the next. My roadmap is showing 5 years ahead.
Okay.
But then in the return of investment, I'm showing the 3 years, so I can show here is just for the first 3 years what we have been saving, just removing the manual human hours put into creating
Right.
a simple thing like engineering change order.
Okay.
And this was kind of my approach to it. I did show it to our VP of Operations and Engineering. Unfortunately, he left the company. So I need
great.
to go chase my next. And
Okay.
it's just hard to get because now kind of the CFO and the CEO of the company, they're very knowledgeable and experienced, but at the same time, sometimes it's challenging to explain how a software helps you
Right.
to do your job better and be more efficient. And when you don't have exactly the background, like our VP of manufacturing, who was very process driven and he wanted to change the mindset and the culture in the company.
Right.
This is where I'm hoping when I present some numbers might help them understand.
Yes.
And we're in a multi-purpose company, so I'm like, okay, that's my tool to do my job.
Right.
Pretty much.
There you go. Nice. Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, I mean, we had a consultant in at Synergist, and they were talking to us and saying, all of you need to become accountants. Everybody in the company needs to become an accountant. You need to think in some different ways than we were thinking. And I think that's true. I mean, we've been talking, so many of us that have been here for decades have been talking to customers. And when we ask, how is Adept helping you? Oftentimes the answers we get are really just very specific about that person's universe, that person's world, and how it helps them on a daily basis and maybe their department. We hope that this is helping you to think and start to connect the dots to the business issues your company faces, quantify that, and really, understand yourself, what you guys are doing, the difference you're making for your company. It's huge. It really is. So thanks. Other question?
I just wanted to add, because even looking at that spreadsheet, it was, it will even justify getting other projects on the go, like a scanning project. So scanning projects for those documents to become in Adept.
Right.
It's saying like, wow, look at all the money that you would save if you didn't have to go pull a document out of a file folder.
That's a great point. Great point. Thank you.